All right, hello and welcome back to the What Do We Know podcast. My name is Zach, here with my brother JP. Uh, we've had a decent break here, a couple months, it seems.
Yeah.
Um, honestly, I mean, mainly due to just the summer has just been crazy. This time of year, I think it's just busy for everybody. But you were up here in New Hampshire, and then we went down there to Virginia. Um, I've done other trips as well in the middle of that, and sometimes it just goes by the wayside.
Yeah. Yeah. Time flies. I was kind of, because I know we were trying to connect over the past few weeks, and I was like, why I pinged you, this weekend. So
Yeah, I'm glad you
figured,
did.
if we don't get it, if we don't do it, then it's just gonna kind of fall off even more, and who knows if we'll start it up again.
Yeah, honestly, that's at least for me sort of like a theme for my life is things just sort of slowly deteriorating, and then it gets to this
Oh,
point where it's like out of sight, out of mind, and then you just like, well, I haven't done it. I'll just whatever, forget about it.
yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. I
I'm
was just
glad.
hoping that you didn't like uh, not want to do it anymore.
No, I very much do. I very much
Yeah.
do. It's kind of like I guess just like motivation and discipline in general are sometimes things I struggle with, and I'm very much the kind of person that hits the ground running like immediately, and like I don't want to stop. There's whatever it is, something new to do or learn or talk about, or in this case podcast, and like I want to spend all my energy on this thing, but then I very often lose steam quickly, I'll like burn myself out on it. And in the case of something like this, which I really enjoy doing, like it can quickly turn into work.
Yeah.
Even though
Yeah.
I enjoy the process of having the conversation, but like especially on my end, like doing the video editing and uploading and manipulating all the files, and sometimes I just don't have the appetite to do it.
Yeah. Well, we have a solution to that now.
Doing.
Yeah, it's called Jimmy.
Oh.
He's been making some money online doing video montage editing, like on Fiverr.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't
So
know that.
he could be we could contract that out.
Hey, that sounds good to me.
We'll have to see how the final product is of that. But
See the quality of it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, video editing is it's it can be fun, but it's not like real work that I'm interested in. It gets like really mundane,
Yeah. Okay.
scrubbing through video files and putting cuts in, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I much prefer the content portion where we're talking.
Yeah. I think that's the fun part.
But yeah, have you? So what's been going on for the past couple months? Anything notable that you've done?
Yeah, I mean, we did, like you said, traveling, and I got up and wake surfed for the first time.
Wake
Which,
surfed. What is
yeah,
that?
so it's like, so my colleague is big into wake surfing, and like this is like a relatively new sport. Like they didn't have it back, we had the lake house and stuff, at least not that I was aware of.
Hmm.
But instead of wakeboarding, it's which you're getting pulled behind a rope on a boat, behind a boat on a rope. Wake surfing is where you may still use a rope to stand up, but once you're up, you're just surfing on the wake, like of the wave that the boat generates, and so you can actually drop the rope.
Oh
So
wow.
you're like just like riding like you're surfing on the wave, and you're pretty close to the boat. You're like within 20 feet or so of the boat. And you're not going fast. You're going like 10 or 15 miles an hour. And there's boats that are specially built for it to make like a big wave that's nice to surf, and they can switch from like making a big wave on one side of the boat, versus the other side. They can switch it over real quick. Um, and they add a lot of extra weight. Like they have water ballast tanks that they can pump full of water to, make the optimal wave, and this whole science that goes into it. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Kind of get out and surf without having to like live near the ocean.
Huh.
So,
Never even
yeah,
heard of it.
yeah, me neither until this year. But yeah, so that was a fun experience, and then yeah, I mean that other thing I don't, I can't really directly address it right now with ears listening, but um, that kind of got me inspired, to do that. And once that cat is out of the bag, can kind of talk about that more easily, I think.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think some and so like a theme that I've been kind of figuring out is I've always like for a long time I've been very like fire oriented and like just like scraping by to an extent, scraping by, but like just trying to be frugal, and
Hmm.
just bank everything I can. And so with this thing I'm looking at, requires money, but it's like it's kind of a balance of having like a fun activity to do, and kind of like balancing the like financial responsibility and like saving and in planning for financial independence or retirement eventually,
Yeah.
with like having like investing money in towards like enjoyment now, so.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good like thing to think of, like striking a balance on. And yeah, so this has kind of been a shift for me, and kind of reorienting towards waiting a bit more towards like the present day, or in this case more like next summer. But um yeah, just striking a balance between like enjoying life now as opposed to just like just kind of scraping by now and trying to just put everything into the future.
Yeah. I've struggled with those exact same things. I think it's actually somewhat natural for people who find when you sort of stumble upon those kind of fire communities, financial independence communities, and start reading information and thinking about different ways you can structure your life and how to save money and prepare for the future, and all that is good stuff. But I think it sort of lends itself, especially for maybe people like us who are maybe a little more analytical than the average person, working in computer science and looking at data and I mean, it's easy to look at the numbers and be able to justify that you have to save every penny, and if you do X, Y, and Z, you can retire 5 months earlier or whatever.
Yeah,
Um, but that there's a trade off. There's a cost to that, which is not spending that money in the present, or not deploying that capital in something that would produce maybe not a monetary benefit, but a sort of like lifestyle benefit. Um, and I've kind of I think I've kind of drifted into the same camp that you have, where it's okay to spend a few dollars here and there. It's okay to um, even spend significant amount of money on as long as you're getting the value out of it. Um, but it can be hard. It's I think by nature I'm more of a sort of tight with money. So, but anyway, I mean, and I've talked about this, with my wife and with other people, like, what is the point of money? It's like, well, if you're not using it as the tool that it is to get the things that you want in this world, I mean, like, what is the point of it? Like, what's the point to die at 90 years old with $10 million or whatever? I mean, um, so yeah, I'm constantly thinking about that, of like the balance of, I want to save money, I want to invest, I want to make sure that I have a secure future for me and my family, but at the same time, you know, don't want to not do the things that you're interested in life. Especially with a family, like with someone like you, and you have kids, and there's value in trying to teach the kids how much a dollar is worth, and helping them, learning to value financial independence, I suppose, but also value in being a kid, and like
Yeah.
enjoying your youth and kind of being silly and maybe even dumb with money. Um, I don't know. And that is constantly on my mind now too. With like we have a baby on the way in January, and how much do you save for the future versus spend on the baby, or so it's kind of a hard line to walk, I think, and I think it's probably is another reason why I love personal finance is that it's personal. It's like there's not necessarily a one size fits all for everyone. There's everyone values different things. They have different interests, and that's okay. I think you should lean into that. So I think it's great. I think it's great. Um, that you're able to stretch a little bit and figure out things that you enjoy and be able to go and get them. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, having spent so long kind of, well, early, 20s, like kind of just scraping by, if even that. And then only having a little bit of breathing room, and like now kind of, being in a position where I can even like realistically think about this type of stuff is pretty neat,
Mm-hmm.
place to be. But it brings, a whole host of choices and challenges and stuff to think through and balance and whatnot. And um, yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, like looking at spending money on a depreciating asset, basically, like from a financial perspective, But
Sure, sure. Yeah, I think as long as you're going into those kind of things with your eyes open, and I think a lot of people, well, it's very common to read stories about people who just justify these purchases and don't have the sort of back end in order, like
yeah,
you're not already saving for retirement, you don't have any investments, and you just, you make $3,000 a month and you're spending 1,500 of it on a truck payment or something. Like you can very easily swing to the other side of this equation, which can be a terrifying place to be.
oh yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I think it's great. I think I probably want to try to incorporate more of that kind of stuff into my life, especially as we sort of now. I think as I'm finding as I'm growing older, like it starts to crystallize a little bit more the things that I like, the things that I don't like, and the areas of my life where it makes sense to spend money.
yeah,
And there's not a lot of reason to deprive yourself of the thing, the interest that you have and that you're interested in, maybe whether it be a hobby or whatever else. You gotta live a little bit. So
yeah. I think it makes it easier to like feel motivated because I mean, I think I've kind of described like in my job, like they work me pretty hard. Like, you know, uh, most days tend to be longer than 8 hours, and like the whole, most days are pretty chaotic, and I'm just like constantly just focused in, trying to keep up and stay on top of things and put out fires and all that. So it's, it's kind of nice to have something fun to like to look forward to, and it's sort of like not justify working hard, but like just feels like it helps make it all like yeah, just like helps keep me motivated, you know.
sure, yeah.
But um, yeah, I had some other thoughts, but I forgot what they are, so I don't know. But
Okay.
yeah,
Well, yeah, I was gonna transition to just talking about you guys spent some time up here this summer. Um, Shelby and I went down to Virginia, drove down with our dog. It wasn't that bad actually. I was expecting it to be worse, the drive, but
yeah,
it was well, it went by fairly quickly anyway. But yeah, and then we spent several days down in Virginia and got to see your house and Jeff's house and spend some time with the families and saw some old friends. Invited some friends, an old teacher, old Latin teacher, Mr. Perry. And I've been reflecting upon that experience, and it was a really good time. It's I think the sort of connections from the past in a way, like high school age and before, things that are connected to that geographic area. You know, Dad's death, all of the stuff from our childhood. I kind of left that area physically a long time ago, and I honestly sort of left it mentally.
Hmm.
Um, I don't really keep up with friends from that time, even though some of the oldest friends I have, and I don't really I don't really make the effort, I guess, to keep those connections alive. I suppose, at least historically, maybe in the past 15 years, and it's kind of a shame. Kind of bums me out at this point. I understand like the sort of the context of why I've done it, and it's almost like running away from the past in a way.
Hmm.
Um, but I would like to try to be better about that. I'd like to, try to restore some of those friendships, relationships, um, and not just friendships, even just family relationships. See you guys more, especially now. Like I said, with our kid on the way, and
Yeah.
just it's nice to have relationships. It's nice to have friends and family members, and um, for whatever reason, for various reasons, uh, kind of like wanted to look past that, I suppose, or like forget that those things existed. I think that's probably just sort of coming of age in a way, sort of growing into adulthood and maturity. But yeah, it was just really nice. It was just a really nice experience to be down there. Have the brothers together with our wives and um, dogs running around and stuff. It was fun. It's fun
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. I'm glad you guys came down. It's kind of funny that, you know, I mean, Bean and I both, we've had our places down here for a while, and that you saw them for the first time this year.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, it really was excited that you could see our spot. Um, our house, I'm kind of like I like our house, but it's also I feel a little embarrassed about it because it's like it's all right. It's a house. There's a lot of stuff about it I don't like. So, but it does the job for now. So anyway, it's nice that you're able to come down and see it. There's also not a whole lot to do. Like that's one thing. When we have people over, just feels like we don't have much to do, And I guess growing up at the lake house, which is like the exact opposite. Like there's tons of stuff to do, like take your pick. We had all sorts of activities in the water, on land, in the air. Like it was crazy.
Hmm.
Um, and so now like having just like a kind of regular old like suburban house, like modest house, and it's like come over and like sit around and talk or eat or like just go on a walk, I guess. But so
We played in
that's
the
one thing.
backyard a little bit. Well, you've got
Yeah,
a
yeah,
nice
you did.
backyard
That's
area.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is fine, for now. But yeah, yeah. So anyway, it was nice having you guys down. And and yeah, I think that is sort of like like you said, like a coming of age thing of kind of you go through a phase where you kind of just want to strike out and do your own thing, and then later on, it's kind of nice to reconnect and reminisce and kind of feels like you kind of tie everything together. Like it's sort of kind of weaving the past into the present and the present back into the past and kind of reconnecting.
Yeah.
But, and I've done that a lot with some of my, friends growing up in a neighborhood and over the years, and even just honestly, just like driving back out through where we grew up and that, going back to the lake and stuff. It's just kind of you know, anywhere I go, there's like a bunch of memories.
Yeah.
Some are, not as so fun to reminisce on, but there's a lot of good memories too. A lot of great memories, and just like kind of like that warm feeling of excitement and just the fun and wonder of childhood. Kind of
Yeah.
brings that back.
Sort of innocence of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to maybe in the next couple of years or something get down there and actually go to the lake again.
Yeah. It'd be fun.
Definitely spent a lot of time there. um, and yeah, to your when you were talking, I was thinking about what you just said about your house, and you mentioned kind of being embarrassed, and I don't think you should be embarrassed. One thing that I have been this idea that I've run into a number of times, and that I try, although sometimes, many times unsuccessfully, to implement in my own life is to try not to compare yourself to others, sort of compare yourself to your past self. Um,
Yeah.
whether it
Yeah.
be professionally, like where you are career wise, or maybe like even how much money you make, or, you know, I guess at the possession level, like your house, your car, or even, something more esoteric, like who you are as a person. How like how well you cope with things, or how good of a husband you are, or father. It's really easy, I think, in our culture to get like the Instagram view of somebody else, and be and it's really easy just to get envious and jealous. I know I've done that, and I think it's somewhat natural, but it's not particularly helpful.
Yeah.
It doesn't. That's the phrase. Comparison is the thief of joy. I think is the way. There's some phrase like that. And so I try to compare myself to my past self. Like, now I have a house. I'm not living literally in an RV anymore, and like it's pretty good.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's and life is not all about possessions anyway. It's just recently I was informed by somebody that a mutual friend is getting divorced, and not that I use social media a lot, but like it was very much like the sort of picturesque family, on social media, and pictures with the kids and the parents, and they go places and they do things, and everybody thinks like, wow, look how great they are. They're so happy. They're so normal, I suppose. And then come to learn they're getting divorced,
Huh.
or already got divorced or whatever. And it's like things are not always as they seem, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the image that is portrayed outwardly, whether on social media or otherwise, is um, most often the best version of the events, and not necessarily the realistic version. And
Yeah.
so it's I think it does us well to remember that life is hard. People are different. It's okay to be in different places and different things, and just try to enjoy what you have and who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that makes sense. I think I know that on like a intellectual level, and then like on an emotional level, I still kind of get wrapped up in it sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think too, like, I mean, growing up the way we did was definitely like a blessing, but could also be kind of a curse. Because I'm like, oh man, like thinking of the house that we grew up in, or the lake house, or so I'm like, like I think something I don't know if it's like a good thing or not, but I kind of like compare uh like where I'm at, what I've accomplished to where like what dad accomplished.
Mm.
And so not to say I want to have like a million things that always need to be fixed up or stuff like that, but yeah, I want to like uh, there's like definitely a part of me that feels like to be successful, I need to be able to match what he was able to accomplish during his life, you know, which is
Yeah.
kind of arbitrary too. I mean, what does that really matter? What your parent accomplished, but it's definitely something that I get kind of fixated on from time to time.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I feel somewhat the same way. It's a tough one on a number of fronts, not the least of which is uh, like, well, whether you use dad specifically as an example or just the average American, is you don't know how much debt is behind the scenes anyway. So
Yeah.
like, you could have all these physical possessions and things, or nice house or nice cars or whatever, and there might be like struggling to maintain the payments on those things. But it's also sort of in a way a different time, like a different economy. And he had a great job as an airline pilot, you know. And actually, when I think back to like, I don't know, like the early '90s or whatever, and like that was an incredible job. Like pre 9
Oh
11
yeah.
days, like,
Yeah.
I mean that it's really incredible. But also, like the house that we grew up in, the the sort of like percentage increase that it would take to afford that house now is just astronomical compared to what it was when they bought it in like what 1990 or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, like
Sure.
real estate prices have skyrocketed. Um, so I don't know, but I think and then the last thing I would say is maybe the most importantly is I think Dad had a lot of those same things. Maybe not comparing himself to his father, but certainly comparing himself to others.
Yeah.
And and when I've talked to Mom about this, you know, and she'll say that he had to be viewed as successful. You know, he wanted people to view him as a success. And he had all these things, and ultimately, like that was one of the things that sort of, you know, consumed him, contributed to his demise. Is once the airline, U.S. Air went bankrupt after 9/11 and lost his retirement and pension and all this stuff, and most of the things that we're talking about sort of just fizzled away. um, Maybe not the house and not the broken down cars and stuff, but like some of the more important stuff, like retirement accounts, um,
Yeah.
and like your job security and paycheck and all that starts to get called into question. So yeah, I see what you're saying, and it's difficult, but I don't think that should be the end all be all. Um, ultimately, ultimately, those things aren't what is most important, even though it can feel like it. Um, so I don't know. It's it's hard. It's hard to like, and I felt this too. Like, sort of felt like I was a failure, or I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but I've struggled with a lot of guilt. Um,
Yeah.
Not so much recently, but like, you know, 10 years ago, um, and more. Because not just dad, but like, mom's dad, Oppo, where he came from, and he basically came from just abject poverty, and then put himself through school, and then put all his siblings through college, and sort of like made a life for himself. And yeah, like we were given a lot. We were given a hell of a lot. And then just feeling in my 20s like I was just squandering these opportunities. And I had a lot of guilt. I didn't really know what to do with it. So I think that could be tied into this conversation in some way. If sort of like, how do you? It's hard to like be a productive member of society, especially when you're like 22 and don't care about anything, and don't have a job, and like there's no clear path forward for you. Like, what do you do? I think we
Yeah.
were probably both in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that you felt more guilt about that, like going through that. I think what I felt more was shame.
Mm.
Like I just I was like just embarrassed to not have it together for so long. And I guess now like I definitely have it more together, but still I feel like in a lot of ways I'm still like catching up to where I like ideally should be or something. or could be if
Could
I
be.
had it together from the beginning.
Oh yeah, like when I kind of looping back to the financial independence stuff we were talking about when I first started getting to that world, I was like, man, if I had gotten this together at like a normal age, like 10 years ago, like imagine where I could be right now.
Yeah,
And it's like, well, but then I remind myself that uh, I like that's not what happened, and even if I did, there's no guarantee that it would have worked out anyway. I mean, I was originally going to school for finance, not computer science, and if I had finished a finance degree and then got a job as like a financial analyst, there's very slim chance that I would have transitioned into a computer science career. And I think I'm quite a bit happier where I am now than I think where I would be if I was just in the finance world. So I don't know. I mean, who's to say it didn't work out? Like, there's still a lot of the story left to be written.
yeah, true. Yeah, and I mean, how things went definitely diverged from what I would have expected, but definitely worked out in an unexpected way. I mean, for me, like where I'm at now with my job and family and everything. So
Yeah, life is full of twists and turns, and now you have all this life experience to look back upon, and then you could impart or attempt to impart wisdom on kids or other people, or help people in their lives and help people who have struggled with similar things. You know, it's kind of a cool thing actually, to
yeah,
be able to overcome all that adversity, even if it's some of it, even if it is somewhat self-imposed adversity, which I think we both probably sabotaged ourselves in various ways.
yeah, yeah. Part of the whole growing up, trying to figure it out process. So I had an interesting dream recently.
Hmm.
You ever have like vivid dreams?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Are the meanings generally pretty clear, or do you like sort of spend a
Mm,
lot of time interpreting them?
I almost never think about interpreting them, but I do have vivid dreams from time to time. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that I try to glean a lot of meaning from them. Is that something you
Yeah.
do?
Uh, Sometimes I don't know. Not much. At least not recently. There was a time like 10 years ago, or maybe longer, sometime around there, where I kept a little dream journal and like fell asleep as I was falling asleep. I would try to like make an intention to remember my dreams, and
Hmm.
that went for a little while. And I don't know. Most of his stuff that was in there, I don't think it really wasn't really much. There's a couple interesting ones here and there. But anyway, I had a pretty vivid dream a few nights ago that involved Dad, and we
Really?
were, yeah, he was driving. We were in some, I don't know, some car, nondescript car. I think it was like I think it had a sunroof. That's all the only thing I remember. And we were going to look at some thing. I don't know what it is, what it was. I was on Craigslist, or it might have been like Facebook Marketplace or something. And a lot of times dreams with Dad are kind of weird because like suddenly he's like here again, and
Hmm.
but like there's this whole gap of time where he wasn't here, and so like I'll spend time like trying to catch him up to like how things are now. And so like I think that's why I think it was something like Facebook Marketplace. And I was like, yeah, there's this thing you can go on to, and like it's like classifieds, and like you can look and see what's for sale.
Hmm.
Anyway, so we were going to look at I don't know, you know like whatever it was, some interesting thing to go buy. And we're like following the directions, and it turned into the street and like started going up this hill, and then it went to another street like in a neighborhood or something, and went up another hill, and then like went up a further hill. And by this time like the incline is like not like straight up, but like only just off.
Hmm.
And we like hit a little bump, and the car just like fell backwards and just was like going through the air, and like gonna fall on the roof. And that's why I remember the sunroof, because like there wasn't even like a full roof there. And
Hmm.
as we were falling, I was like trying to put my seatbelt on, I guess, or make sure it was on. And I was like frantically trying to text Amy that I love her before like we crashed. And you know could have been killed. But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird dream. It's like, I don't know if there's a meaning in there or not, but I keep trying to think of it, like, or trying to see if there. I mean, I've come up with like different ideas of what the meaning could be, but um, definitely like tied into going after something with dad, leading to a you know, not the desired end result.
That's really interesting. The the first place my mind goes, for better or for worse, is a is to ancient Greece. I don't. I'm not sure if I brought this up before. I feel like I have. Let me do this. I would not have remembered the name Sisyphus. Um, he was the founder. Blah blah blah. So this is a guy who's in the underworld in Greek mythology. Hades punished him for cheating death by forcing him to roll an immense boulder up a hill, only for it to roll down every time it neared the top, repeating this action for eternity. So the idea is his punishment is he's at the bottom of the hill. He has to roll this big boulder up the hill, but as he gets to the top, it just rolls back down. He can never get to the top.
Huh.
And
Yeah.
for some reason, the you describing that dream, the sort of imagery of going up, and then sort of almost getting vertical and falling down,
Yeah.
makes me think of this story. I don't know what that means, but
Yeah. I mean, I think like maybe a worst case interpretation with this thing, I've been looking at uh, purchasing is, chasing the wrong things for happiness. And, because dad certainly had a way of doing that with all his toys. So
yeah,
that's kind
absolutely.
of what's great, what came to mind, like the most clear interpretation for it. But, you know,
I think there's something to that, and I'll share this story. Um, since we were just talking about me being in Virginia, and we were there, I invited Mr. Perry over. I'm sure he'll be okay with me mentioning this. Um, but who was my Latin teacher from high school, and he came over, and we had for several hours. Jeff grilled out or smoked up some meats, and we just had a really nice time and catching up and talking about old stuff and stuff that happened 20 years ago, and um, really really nice time. But anyway, at the end of that, I walked him out. I walked him outside, and he recanted to me this story that happened 20 years ago, which was I'm not sure if you knew this, but Dad and Mr. Perry became like sort of friends. They
yeah,
because they were both into motorcycles, and um, I think they even went to Florida. I think Mr. Perry accompanied them to like Daytona Bike Week or something. I might be getting that wrong, but
yeah, I
something
think
like
I
that.
remember hearing that story. But
Yeah, and so shortly after Dad died, I think we were doing some event. Can't remember what it was. I was somewhere. Mr. Perry was like dropping me back off at home, and we were in the garage, and there were still all the motorcycles and parts and cars and all the stuff that Dad had all over the place shortly after his death. And I sort of like had a moment where I kind of like broke down and was looking around at all these things, and essentially said something to the effect of, look at all these things he had. He couldn't enjoy them. He couldn't he couldn't find a way to make himself happy, more or less. That
yeah,
he couldn't enjoy. Didn't have the opportunity really to stick around long enough to um, enjoy all this stuff. And we had a nice moment, and he comforted me. And this was 20 years ago, And so 2 months ago, whenever I was down there, and I'm saying goodbye to him, and he said to me, "Sorry." And he just said, that made such an impression on him, on his life. It's just one moment from 20 years ago that I remember. I mean, I don't remember a lot of it, but I remember it happening. And he said it was, this something that changed the course of his life. Essentially, was that
Oh, wow.
this whole concept of trying to make sure you enjoy life and you enjoy it with the people around you. I think he said it was just very, very, very wise words. And I was sort of struck by that. I never would have imagined that he would remember that, or that it would mean anything to him.
Yeah, it's definitely a lesson to take from dad, right? Like, you could have all the toys in the world and still not be happy.
Yeah, and that's why, it's good to talk about it, actually. When we're talking about comparison and having a house and toys and all this stuff, I mean, yeah, it's great, but I mean, and you just said yourself that you have a hard time kind of accepting this idea that you feel like you're behind where dad was. Well,
Yeah.
if he was that far ahead, I mean, it didn't mean much. It wasn't enough. It did not prove itself to be a sort of winning strategy to solely focus on all these possessions. It was just sort of hiding the underlying issues, I guess. Just I don't blame him for it. I think he's just trying to figure out how to survive. And these are the things that he did. But I don't think it's not clear to me that if you had a nicer house or you had more cars or motorcycles or whatever, that it would actually make you happier or provide any benefit other than you got a few nicer things. It's
Yeah.
not part of the bedrock, I suppose, of a relationship or a good life. It's just extra. But I don't know. It's not expecting the emotional experience, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we both have a lot of that. Just, and it's probably always going to be just stuff to work through and just emotionally like process as it comes up with all that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe someday it'll all be resolved and gone, whatever. But for me, it just comes up constantly from time to time.
Yeah, it comes and goes. Sometimes I have mixed feelings about it. Sometimes I feel almost a little embarrassed, I guess, that something, it's been like 20 years, and sometimes I still can't tell a story without crying. But grief is just impacts people differently. It's it's a hard thing. I think I've always sort of been more of someone who wears my emotions on my sleeve, so to speak. It's harder for me to conceal um, really moving emotions, especially grief, sadness. Like if I get depressed, like it's pretty obvious, I think, for other people to see. And And grief is hard. I just when literally I think not sure we must have talked about this in the past one, but like when you guys are up here, we had to put our dog down, our dog Penny, and I mean it crushed me. I
Yeah,
couldn't function
yeah,
for a couple weeks really. It's just
yeah.
so sad.
No, I don't think we have talked about it actually, because I don't think we've had a um, podcast since we came up.
Oh wow.
But um, yeah, that's I felt really bad for you. I could see it. It was not easy, and I remember when Abdog passed away, like I was just pretty torn up for a while. Couldn't even sleep for a while. You know?
Yeah. The I mean we've our family in particular has experienced immense amounts of loss um, in general, but the loss of a pet is sort of feels different. It's like almost a more intense pain in a way. I get possibly just because like the an animal is just like so innocent, so it's like pure innocence.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
immediate too. Like it's immediate effect on your daily
yeah,
like routine and life and everything. I mean, it's like losing a household member as opposed to like a distant relative or something.
yeah, yeah. Like even when Dad died, I mean, I I think I was just in shock for so long.
Yeah.
It's like really hard to process the emotions. Whereas, losing the dog, it's like I was certainly not in shock, but I mean, I was just immediately in like intense grief. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, it was really hard. And so in the case of Penny, it's always tough once a dog gets to a certain age. Where like, I mean, she was 14. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty old for a dog, and just get to a point where it's like the day is coming, but you don't know when, and you don't know what's going to trigger it. And then the day came, and we sort of like realized this is what we have to do, and went to the vet. And it was tough for us because so she had basically I forget the medical name, but what they call basically old dog syndrome. It's just literally just being
Oh,
old. And she had basically it's not a stroke, but it's like they start having equilibrium issues, and like she couldn't stand up, she couldn't like walk and like stand or even lay, she couldn't even lay down properly. It's like
huh.
she'd like lay weird. And what the vet told us is like, yeah, I mean, it might not be the end of the world, like she might be okay, you might be able to take her home. um and there's really no treatment other than I think they said like the treatment is just one of trying to make her life easy, like not making her have to go up and down stairs, and like just protecting her in her environment so she doesn't hurt herself. And she said, and there's a chance that you could take her home, and in a few days she sort of shakes it off, and then she sort of is okay again. But there's also the chance that she doesn't, and that it's going to get worse. Um, and so at that point, we had already sort of built up this entire morning that we're going to put the dog down. We are already like assuming this was happening. And so, in the vet's office, we just decided, I mean, we just have to do it.
Yeah.
And we already, Penny was already like really bad with kids, and Shelby was already pregnant, and, the baby's coming. And if it wasn't that day, it would have been the next month or 3 months later or whatever. And, after that, I had a little bit of guilt actually after that, because I was like, oh man, like maybe we did it too early. Like maybe we could have brought her home, and she got a little bit better, and we could have given her 3 more months. But at least in that case, I kind of got over the guilt pretty quickly from just like reading online and learning a little bit, and um, there's no guarantee any of that would have happened, and she could have came home and gotten immediately worse, and it could have been, you know, we could have dragged it out, and she could have had a horrible last couple months. So you just never know. And then the other thing that people say is that it's always better to do it a day too early than a day too late. Is
Hmm.
that that if the dog starts suffering, they're suffering needlessly, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, and then actually, I talked to mom about this, but the thing that helped me the most was if you can wrap your head around this idea that, like, death is a part of life. Death is inevitable. Whether you're a dog, whether you're a human being or a whale or whatever, even a tree, like death sort of comes for us all, right? Like eventually, it's an eventuality. And
Yeah.
so, um, this might be influenced by mom's time in hospice, but there's sort of this idea that as a sort of caretaker, one of the most loving things you can do is sort of ease that transition to death, because it's going to happen. Like, you can't get around it. And whether we put that dog down that day or in 3-4 months, the dog was going to die. There's just no getting around it. And so one of the most loving things you can do is help that transition to death be as painless as possible, and give them the best quality of life until then. And so that helped me a lot, because I felt like, I mean, we all we ever wanted to do was, be loving dog parents. We wanted the best for the dog, and she lived a great life after we rescued her. She had a really hard life early on, but a great life afterwards. And I mean, that's all you can really do. Everybody has to die. Everything has to die. And it's not like she had years left. I mean, you're literally counting the days more or less before you have to do this. Um, so we did it. She had a nice, painless death. Essentially, just they just drug him up, and they give him basically an overdose of sedation drugs, and she just slipped to sleep, and then her heart stopped, and that's that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it. I was volunteering in a animal shelter a long time ago, and saw them put a dog to sleep. And it's very, I guess, it's a very painless way to go. I mean,
Yeah,
couldn't ask for like a better way to exit. You know.
yeah, yeah.
So
So I mean, that's pretty much what happened, and we struggled for a while with it, and we still have the odd day, I suppose. But we have a lot of memories. We have a lot of good pictures and videos, and life moves on. But
yeah, yeah. I was I think at least as long as I can remember in my life, I've always been afraid of death, like dying, and that's kind of uh, decreased quite a bit lately or the past year. And honestly, it was from my uh, butt surgery and then my colonoscopy.
mm,
Is like getting put under and you just don't exist for however long, and then you come back and you start like coming to, and you're in a different place and you don't remember anything in the gap. And
yeah,
so if that's what death is like, where you just don't exist, like it's really nothing to be afraid of. You're just there, like there is nothing. I mean, maybe there's like afterlife and that stuff, but from that experience of just not existing when I was out, it definitely decreased my anxiety about it.
mm, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a similar. Yeah, I mean, I had when I the only real time I've had that is when I had my wisdom teeth out. And they put me under. I don't think I've had any other, like, surgery to the point of being under. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very weird experience because you're just laying there, and then before you know it, you're out. It's not like drowsy or anything. It's just bam,
Yeah.
and then it's not even you don't even. For me, I didn't even experience going out. I just experienced waking back up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Um, yeah. I don't know that I'm afraid of death. I think I've generally come to accept it, but I just hope that it doesn't have to. I think most people hope that they don't have to endure some sort of painful, death. I'm not particularly afraid. I don't think of the act of like being dead. I suppose, like you're saying, you just don't exist. But I mean, there's a lot of not great ways to go. you know.
yeah, I think that's
Um,
yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, the process of dying is more scary, I think, than actually being dead.
yeah, which kind of gets in. I think we did talk about this sort of like assisted suicide and people who sort of have terminal cancer or something sort of get to the end and getting to sort of go out on your own. Um, I don't know, pick your own path type of thing. And I mean that's basically what happened with the dog, right? I mean we euthanized the dog, and I think it was the right decision. If the dog was like sentient to the point where like the dog could talk to us, I can't imagine that they would pick a different way to die. I mean, it was very peaceful.
Yeah,
But we don't seem to do that. Doesn't really seem to be mainstream for people anyway. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. I guess there's other considerations there, like does someone really know what they're doing when they're choosing to die, or
Yeah.
versus like I don't know, terminal illness or whatever. But I don't know. I guess we already kind of ventured through that territory.
Yeah.
So tell me about these VHS tapes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I mean, sort of in the same vein of dad and family, and in mom's basement, she had this big box of I've got it sitting here next to me of VHS tapes that dad, I think pretty much just dad filmed throughout the late 80s and 90s of us growing up and doing different things as kids. And there's a bunch of them. There's probably, I don't know, 40 tapes. There's a lot of them. Some of them are like the big VHS, and then some of them are I think it's like VHS C. It's like the little tapes that you put into an adapter tape.
Yeah,
And anyway, I saw them down there. Maybe even when you guys were up here, we were crawling around the basement.
yeah,
And we didn't have a way to play them. We didn't have any. We didn't have a VCR, and we couldn't get a VCR. I was very surprised how hard it is to get a VCR these days. But I mean,
yeah,
sort of makes sense. I mean, who needs a VCR? So you can still get them, but they're very expensive. You either have to. I think you can probably still buy some of them new. Well, actually, I think the ones on Amazon are like refurbished ones or something. Um, but like we're talking like hundreds of dollars. And so what I wanted to do was I thought it would be cool to try to digitize these tapes so that we could actually number one watch them, but also sort of preserve them. I mean, being in the tape format, it's sort of susceptible to degradation and being corrupted over time. Um, so I started looking into this way to preserve these tapes. Actually, my wife Shelby, she um, had done this in the past for her parents. She like gave them. There's like these services where you can send the tapes in and they'll do it for you.
yeah.
But the services are like really expensive. Like I think they paid, I don't know, maybe like a couple $100, and you can send in like a couple tapes. Like they'll give you like a few hours worth of content.
Huh.
And so it's just not practical to do that. And so I wanted to buy the hardware myself, and so I got it right here actually. So I bought a VCR. I don't know if
Oh
I'm going to be
yeah,
able to show it. Here's the VCR,
old school.
old school VCR, and I actually got it on eBay. Um,
Huh.
Nice little package where you get the VCR and then you get all the cords to hook it up and the to hook it up to the computer so that you can digitize it, because it needs like a you need to convert basically the analog signal into digital, and so you need some specialized cords for that. So I got all that and got it all hooked up, and then you can use software in your computer to record it. But the key thing is the only way to do it is in real time. So you have to play each tape. Some of the tapes are like 2+ hours of tape, right?
Yeah.
And so there's no like, I mean, you can fast forward on the VCR, but then the recorded content is fast forwarded. So you literally have to play each tape, at normal speed, and that's how you digitize. And I think that's why it's so expensive for these third-party companies is, it's multiple hours worth of playing a tape and recording it, and then maybe editing off the parts that, beginning or end or something. And so that's what I've been doing. I've done about, I want to say like 8 or 9 tapes so far. Mostly I've been starting with the big tape, so it's like late 80s, early 90s tapes, and sometimes I'll play them and watch them as I record them, and sometimes I'll just throw them on and record and come back later.
Are
But
they
it's
pretty good quality still?
I mean, it's VHS quality, so
Yeah,
it's okay.
but it hasn't like degraded with time or
It
like
no,
noticeably.
I maybe some. I don't think it's probably perfect, but it's the biggest struggle I've noticed is, well, like if you fire up a VHS of, like a movie, it's not going to be the best quality, but it's a lot better than what these are because this came out of a handheld camcorder. And so the video quality isn't great. The audio quality on some of them is really not great. A lot of static. Um, so it's all over the board, but they're watchable. Um, and the resolution is like uh, it's like 480 pixels or something wide
Yeah.
or something. So it's dramatically less than, anything that we would be used to these days. But I mean, it's watchable. You you can watch it, you can listen to it, and it's been great so far. Watching us when we're little kids. Um, I think like one of the ones I did was in 1987. I'm literally like a year old, and we're walking around at the old lake house that they had, walking around on the deck, and Dad's filming us, and we're playing with the dog and like chairs on the deck and stuff, and then playing with Dad, and it's great. It's really fun to actually see that, and these are things that I've never seen before. I certainly don't have memories of, um, and it's also it's actually really nice to have these sort of moments of Dad.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Even though he's filming most of them, but sometimes he sets the camera up and like walks into frame, or like Mom is filming, and but you can hear his voice. And a couple of times I got I got my emotions moved to tears, like just listening to him, just hearing his voice, like hearing little inflections, things you haven't heard in 20 years. It's so it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I imagine.
But it's really nice.
Yeah.
It's really nice. And so I want to do the whole library that we have. Um, and then I'm not sure. I want to make it available to everybody. I'm not really sure how exactly I'm going to do that, but
It's like upload it to Google Drive or something, or
yeah, something.
are you gonna do all the editing too?
Well, I have started editing them. Um, because like some of the tapes are like over 2 hours, and there's just it'll be like at Ocean City at the beach, and then a birthday party, and then it's like unrelated stuff sometimes. So I've started trying to cut them up so that it's a little more consumable, which is just more video editing.
Yeah.
And then some of them is just like it's just completely unwatchable. Like, what's the 1992 Christmas, the evening, Christmas Day 1992 during the evening. That's the Dad set up the video camera in the corner. I guess I don't remember this, but grandmother Pat was in town, and Aunt Kathy and Uncle Bob. They were all in Virginia, and Anna's there, and then it's 1992, so Maggie's there, and but I set up the camera in the corner, and then it's just like literally 2 hours of recording like the living room and like people like on the ground, and but the audio is completely botched. Like it's just super staticky the whole time. I don't know why anyone would ever want to watch it, but it's there. But yeah, it's really funny actually because so there's also the morning of 1992 Christmas, which is great. Which is it's like you and me, and we're down there opening our stockings, and Mom comes down, Dad comes down, and then Jeff comes down, and where everyone's calling him Beano, and then Maggie's crawling around, and everybody's calling her Moo, or Maggie Moo, or Miss Moo, and which is funny. It's just funny to watch, but there's some really funny moments. So they're definitely good tapes and good memories to have.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Even if the quality isn't great, it's pretty cool to have like those snapshots back in time.
Oh yeah, it literally feels this is kind of a tangent, but there's a movie called The Butterfly Effect.
Oh yeah,
Which is, and like, have you seen that, or like
long time ago. I don't even remember it, but I remember like the idea of the butterfly effect.
Yeah, and like I mean the premise is it's like a kind of like thriller science fiction stuff where like he watches the tapes of his childhood, and then like it like transports him back to that memory, and then he's like living the memory, and he can like change things in his past. Um, but it's anyway, it makes me think of that, like watching these old movies, and like especially what I've been dragging on. It's like 30 minutes, and everything's being filmed, and Dad's talking, and you see all the like all the in between moments. It's not just like perfect content. It's like sometimes there's people chatting, and I don't know. It almost like you almost feel like you're there in a weird way. Like it's something from your past that like I have weird like sort of scattered memories of, but it's also like in front of me, and like Dad's there, and like hearing him like call my name on the tape, and it's like he's talking to me, but it's from 30 years ago, and it's kind of a weird experience, and it almost
Yeah,
feels like I'm there in a way, and then like the tape stops, and it's like I'm not there.
yeah,
It just cuts out. So yeah, it really I've found so far that it kind of transports me back to being a kid. Very strange experience. But it's great. It's a great experience to have. I'm really glad we have these, and I've still got a ton. I still have a huge amount of tapes. But I had to take a break because I was just like crying all the time.
oh
I
man,
needed an
yeah.
emotional break.
Yeah, I really looking forward to watching them. I've we've have like bits and pieces of little recordings, but and then photos and stuff. But yeah, I'm glad we still have all those tapes. I didn't, before we found them this summer, I didn't know we had that many. I thought we had like a dozen or something. I didn't know we had a whole box.
Oh yeah, we've got a ton of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know what other treasures are hidden in there, but Yeah, so some of the other ones we've done. Frontier Town, which is a little place that we went, like a little theme park, and got all the Frontier Town train ride where we hide the gold and the robbers come and rob the train. And I showed it to Shelby because it's uh, we're on the train and the guys come up and they say, "Hey, will you please hide this gold for us?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want to do it." And so then we hide it, and then the robbers come and and then I was like, "Yeah, I remember being really anxious about this." And then the robbers come and I'm just sitting there like it's
Yeah,
hilarious to watch. And then
yeah.
Ocean City, we've got us running around Ocean City on the beach, and also at the doing all the games and the rides, thrashers and go karts, and um, there's one there's one part where I think we're it's somewhere in Ocean City where we're riding like big wheels, like these
Huh.
like or power wheels, these like we're just kids and we're riding around in these little power wheel things. And
Oh yeah.
after I saw the video, I'm like, I kind of remember this a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's the same place as the slick track in the
well, see,
tanks.
because that's the thing. Because then there's some part where like dad like wants to hand the camera to mom, and he's like, "Will you take this? I want to go do the go karts." Like by himself, and then there's a video of him riding the go karts by himself. Because he loved
Sounds
riding the
about
go
right.
karts.
Huh.
Yep.
So, so I imagine you're excited. So, how would you describe your experience, like expectant dad, like come January, that you're gonna be it?
Yeah. Um, Equal parts excited and anxious, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's no honest. Overall, it's very positive. I'm very excited about it. Um, we're getting the house ready, and I'm literally yesterday, and today, I was getting paint on the walls in the nursery area, like trying to get it all set up, and um, we're buying stuff for the baby, and we've got some. I think we got some classes coming up, like birthing class and uh, how to care for a baby. I don't know. I'm not sure. Um, yeah, it's sort of surreal. Um, Very nervous about the whole thing, to be honest with you. The premise of caring for an infant and just being a dad is sort of terrifying.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm gonna try to rise to the occasion and just figure it out, I guess. Uh, but yeah, it's a very strange experience. Like we go to the doctor and they do the ultrasound and like listening to the heartbeat. And honestly, like Shelby kind of laughs at it because it's like kind of just like freaks me out. Like
Huh.
people talk about, oh, once you see your baby, once you hear your baby's heartbeat, once you feel him kick, you won't believe how magical it is. It just freaks me out.
Huh. What is it like? Like in what way?
I don't know, man. Like just it just starts to get really real, I
Yeah.
guess. Um, yeah, it's I definitely don't fault anybody for like being afraid of this process because it feels very terrifying in a lot of ways. And especially like Shelby, the baby is just starting to like kick now, at least where you can feel it externally, and like I feel it, and it's almost like weirds me out. I don't
Huh.
know.
Is it the fact that like like that's part of you, like in a way, or is it like just like that this idea of having a kid is now becoming like a physical reality, or
I think it's that. I think it's also this like the first sort of like half of the pregnancy. I mean, I know that she's pregnant, and I can see like the morning sickness, and we can hear it from the doctors and stuff. But like you don't really start showing that much. And then, her belly's growing, and then like physically feeling where the baby is kicking, like it starts to get real. It starts
Yeah.
to like transition from this sort of idea into like reality.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know, for whatever reason, it's just freaks me out. So,
So, do you have any like like how dad was always with the video recorder? Like, do you have any plans to do any of that type of stuff? Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, now you can like pretty much record as much of like someone's life as you want. Like, do you have any like like I don't know, like are you planning to always have a camera around, or are you gonna do you have any special things like planned for kind of like I guess recording as they grow up, as he grows up?
I mean, we're definitely gonna take a lot of pictures and videos, I think. I don't know if we have any specific like special things planned out in that realm outside of just trying to capture a lot of moments. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see. We'll see. I'm trying to figure out um, fun things to do, or like some people like set up an email account for their unborn kid and like then email them on like big days in their life and like give the email account to them when they're 18 or something, or like
Oh yeah,
there's a
that'd
lot
be
of
cool.
stuff like that, like trying to figure out gifts. Or I think Shelby's brother has like a bottle of whiskey or something from the year they were born that he's going to give
Huh.
them later in life, I think, or something like that, or scotch maybe. Um, so yeah, I'm trying to brainstorm ideas like that and figure out like I don't know, maybe I'll like write my son letters or something throughout his life. Um, I don't know. It's actually kind of cool. I mean, it's really cool that we live in like this day and age where we're doing this podcast thing, and like he'll be able to look back at that if he wants to.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, another sort of with the VHS tapes, it's fun to like look back and hear Dad talk, and when he says some of the things, just hear the way he like interacts with other people, and but you don't really get a lot of um, what he's really thinking or feeling. Um, it's more of just recording the moments, and so like it would be great if we. I don't know. I've thought about like if we had something, not maybe not like this, but in general, where we could kind of know more about what Dad was like. What did he think about the world? Like
Yeah.
um, on different topics, and I remember some of these things just from interacting with him, but um, especially like complex topics, that some of the stuff that we've talked about here. I mean, I think most people go through life without trying to articulate those, let alone having a record for them for like their kids or something. So I don't know. I think this is pretty cool, and that's another reason why I'd like to continue to do this. If for nothing else, just to prove later on that like, hey, nobody has it all figured out. I mean, life
Yeah.
is just messy, and you just go through it, and um, be able to point back at this episode and say, look, like I had no idea what was going on. I was scared out of my mind. Um, but another concept that I think about a lot is there's this idea that like as you go through life, you should try to sort of like embrace what's going on, like try new things, and the phrase that I come back to is to lean in, right?
Hmm.
Sort of like advice for myself, but for other people too, is what I really take it to mean is just to try to be in the present moment and try to sort of take it all in, like I don't know how to be a father, but I want to try to lean into it and just see if I can figure it out, right? I don't want to be the sort of absent-minded father. And so that's what I'm going to try to do, like whether it's that or whether it's I mean, it's the same thing, sort of the same approach I use, for my career and learning and programming. It's like, I don't know how to do this, but sort of lean in, just try to figure it out, and you learn something along the way. So that's what I'm going to try to do. But yeah, terrified in a lot of ways, but very excited. So we will see where that takes us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely an exciting time. It's going to be, it's like, I mean, yeah, like a life-changing period.
Yeah, I know that nothing will go back to normal after this, so.
It'll be a new normal.
Yeah, and for the longest time, I mean, to be honest with you, for the longest time, I really didn't want to have kids. I would, especially through my 20s, I was like, yeah, I get it. A lot of people do it. And I think it was just like, I don't want the imposition on my life, like I want to live the life that I want to live without having to care for another human being. Um, but that's changed, it's changed in a lot of ways. And the biggest one is and I've told my therapist this, is like, if I try to imagine myself later in life being like 80 years old, I think I would have regretted, um, not having this experience, like not trying to do this. And so I'm glad that it finally sort of happened for us. Spent a lot of money to make it happen, the fertility stuff, but um, yeah, I mean, we're past the halfway point now, so it's going to start getting very real very quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so it seems like you guys, having worked at, maybe it's having worked at a summer camp and interacting with kids a lot, like you already both really know your like how to interact with kids and guide them and like maintain law and order
Well,
when dealing with them.
maybe
Yeah.
not I think I'll be better once they're like 5 years old. Like little kids is hard. Like newborn age up to 2 years old. I mean, I don't know how I'm gonna figure that out. But I mean, I can entertain children just by being an idiot. I mean, children are entertained. Um, but I've only ever done that in the context of someone else's kids, or I can eventually leave.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not sure how that's gonna work when they're in my house all the time.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll just send them down to old Uncle JP's house.
Oh man. Yeah. I don't know if I'll ever have it figured out.
uh,
We had a like it was a week or two ago. We happened to all the kids and Amy and I were in at the kitchen table eating ice cream or something. And I don't even know how it started, but it ended up, from like just like sitting around eating ice cream, casual conversation to like they were all like kind of like airing their grievances
oh,
with how we've been parenting, and like just bringing up different things that have been on their minds. And it was really good, really good conversation and discussion and some eye-opening stuff. And I think we all kind of felt heard
hmm,
um, and uh, and yeah, just it just felt like we're able to communicate what was on our minds and understand each other better. But um, yeah, it can be yeah, trying to parents is weird because you think I have like my perspective on it, and then the kids are coming at it from a different perspective, each of them, and
sure.
trying to like guide them, but still like take into account their perceptions, you know, and put those in context. And um, yeah, it's and then also like how much to like dialogue to have versus when to just kind of like pull rank and just be like,
Sure.
no, this is how it's got to be. Like this is it. Like you know, you just gotta follow us on this one. And it's I mean, it's definitely a balancing act, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like my default tendency just from growing up and like dad being the way he was is just like just shut it down.
Yeah.
Just you know like we're done. This is how it's gonna be. But but yeah, like the dialogue approach is I think that if you can get it to work and like make headway with it, it seems like it's a more effective approach.
Are you able to reason with a teenager?
Sometimes, sometimes I feel like you know we get through and make progress, and other times no. You know, especially when like emotions are running hot, and
Yeah.
you know, at some point you're just you know there's not really any point in continuing a conversation at that moment. Just
Yeah.
kind of cool off and pick it up later. But I don't know. These kids are definitely more reasonable, like able to reason with than I feel like I was at their
Mm.
ages.
Yeah,
So
that's Shelby keeps I've shown her some of these clips of these tapes and she just kind of rolls her eyes and she's like, "Oh my gosh, our son is going to be so stubborn and, headstrong like you and it's going to be a pain in the butt." Um yeah, I mean, I think I mean in terms of parenting, I don't know. I've never been a parent. I mean, a lot of it's going to be trial by fire, I think, but Shelby and I have been talking a lot about it and you know, how to figure some of this stuff out. I do think, sort of like what you were saying about dad, I think some of the strategies that he used, as I look back now, I mean, I certainly didn't like them at the time or like that how he was approaching some things, but I can certainly appreciate them now, especially because, after dad died, things got a lot different and it's just
yeah,
mom and in terms of parenting and it sort of I think she was just overwhelmed, and I can't imagine being in her position. Must have been incredibly difficult. Um, but it kind of became a little more, a little more loose. It
yeah,
was a little more just like, do whatever you need to do. And by that time, I was already like 17, and I guess you were already out of the house, and um, I, and it was like at the time, again, like as a kid, as a 17-year-old kid, it's like feels kind of nice to not have to answer. I mean, honestly, not have to answer to a father, right? Like he's not there,
yeah. The disciplinarian was gone.
right? But looking back now, it's like, man, I think that sort of set me back, maturity wise and growing into an adult and learning how to take real responsibility both in my life, but also like, how I interact with other people. And um, so I do think there's some value there. So that sort of like kind of like tough love approach.
Yeah,
Um, but I don't know. I'm not really sure how we're gonna walk that line. We're gonna have to figure that out. But I do think that, especially in sort of in light of how we were raised as kids, and then through our teenager years and getting into an adulthood, I mean, we were kind of. I mean, we had a lot of stuff. I feel like
yeah,
probably had too much stuff. Probably had
yeah,
too. We were probably a little too spoiled, honestly.
yeah,
Um, and I don't think that did us any favors, especially like as I got into like my 20s. And again, dad's not around, and I'm like it's supposed to be in college, and I kind of just don't care about anything. And there wasn't really that presence that I think dad would have represented to course correct,
yeah,
help me course correct. And I think, I think that probably set me back a number of years in my real transition to adulthood.
Same. Yeah, I think I kind of look at it in terms of like externally oriented discipline versus like an internal uh, like source of discipline, and I was still very much reliant on him as the external like motivation, like to be disciplined and to stay on task. And then when that was gone, I kind of fumbled around for a long time before I finally started taking that internally and just getting it together.
What was the impetus, I guess, for you to finally sort of cross that bridge, so to speak?
Um, I think it was a couple things. One is just like it took a while, but mom eventually just stopped giving me money. Like,
Mm.
I mean, she was, wasn't like uh like I was never homeless, but that was only just because she was, like too generous to kick me out onto the street, because like for a while, like I didn't have anything. Like, I wasn't really, didn't have any money, didn't have a job, didn't have, just wasn't doing anything productive. Um, so I remember, I think it was around 2008 or well, I don't know. Yeah, there were a couple of things, but at one point she and Ralph started taking vacations and not taking any of us with them. I was like, hey, like I want to go on vacation. Like a cruise sounds nice. We
Yeah.
weren't invited. I was like, oh, okay. And yeah, just, like I had the bare minimum to survive, like food and shelter. And just, I decided like over time I just got sick of that and I wanted to have more fun experiences and have more freedom and flexibility. So that was part of it. Um,
Mm.
and then there was a point, 2006, where I realized the way I was living is just like not uh, and back then, like I was still, my long-term plan was not to have a plan. Like I was just kind of planning to just give up and just, you know, eventually die, or just not try. Like just kind of do what I wanted, what felt good in the moment. And I was looked at, dad passing away, and it just seemed like for a while I just kind of wrote off his like the lessons he would teach and the values. I just kind of was like, well, look how he ended up. So just just kind of wrote him off. And so I was just more focused on having fun in the moment and not,
Yeah.
worrying about being responsible or worrying about like, you know, setting myself up for a better tomorrow. I just focused on today. And and then yeah, it was sort of like kind of in the fall of 2006 when I just realized I just I didn't want to do that. Like I didn't want to just kind of uh, squander the rest of my time doing nothing. And I
Hmm.
wanted to like pick myself up and get my life back together. And part of it too, like I didn't want to die and let mom down. Like I wanted to like get myself back on track, and part of that was to live up to her expectations, or just to like make her happy. Like
Yeah.
I didn't want to disappoint her. um I remember that, like having that experience clearly. um so yeah, this is a long road for me though, because I was in a bad spot for a while in '07, '08, '09. Just focused on getting my life cleaned up and uh getting serious about school and finishing undergrad finally, and then getting into grad school. And even though that course, that medical direction, I eventually lost interest in, for better or worse. But just getting serious about life and getting myself into a better spot. It took many years to kind of get back on track.
Yeah.
after having squandered so many years.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, but that was a big shift though, going from doing something because I was being told to do it to doing something because I knew it was the right thing to do.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, in many ways, I lived a similar life to that. Although I think we would both agree you might have went a little bit further.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I honestly, I have a lot of the same. I've come to, I think, a lot of the same conclusions, which is I didn't really start putting my foot down until mom sort of cut the money off.
yeah.
um, and I remember, I moved to New York and I was living in an RV at the time, and then I had a friend up there who had a 2 bedroom apartment, and he let me, sort of take the other bedroom, and the rent was super cheap, like literally like $300 a month or something. And I was able to pay that because I still had money coming in, and I would work the summers and I would work odd weekends and do like odd jobs and stupid stuff. But then eventually, and I remember, at the time I was going to summer camp all the time every year and trying to figure out. I had no idea what I was doing with my life or what I wanted to do. And then eventually I was like, man, I need to, I kind of need to figure something out here. Um, and so then I started doing school online again, not because I wanted to really, but because I felt guilty. Honestly, is what it comes down to. And it was easy, It was really a joke, to be perfectly honest. I got a degree out of it, but like I barely knew anything. But then, uh, so the my buddy I was living with decided to buy a house in a neighboring town, and he said I could rent a room from him in the house, which was fine, but the rent was going to double. So
Huh.
now instead of like $300 a month, now I'm paying like over 600. And I was like, man, this sucks. And so I had to get a job. That's why I started working at a restaurant. But like when I look back at it now, it's like that's a good thing. Like you need to have life squeeze you a little bit, you know?
Yeah,
And it worked out great. And I didn't want to get a job at a restaurant where I'm bussing tables, but I did, and it was fine. And I learned a lot about life and people from that job, and have some good memories from it. Um, but like if those things don't happen, then you know what is the saying? Necessity is the mother of invention. I mean, like you have to put a little bit of pressure on yourself sometimes, especially for someone like me who can be stubborn, and I don't want to do anything unless I really have to. And um, you know, I'm not just going to willingly be like, oh, I just love to work, so I'm going to go get a job. I have to, somebody has to more or less force me into it. I need structure, really, what it
yeah,
comes down to.
yeah,
And so, yeah, same sort of thing. When the money runs out, like what are your options? Like, I don't want to just live on the street, so I guess I have to get a job.
yeah,
Um, but I don't know. I'm those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about as I, am looking to be a parent here. And how do you sort of convey that message while still being like a loving parent? And I probably don't have to worry about these particular problems for a while. I mean,
yeah,
like you can tell a 3-year-old, well, you need to get a job. I mean, you have to take care of these kids. But trying to raise a child who can, value, um, well, I don't know, value themselves, value sort of striking out into the world, and carving your own path. And I don't know how you do that if you just give them everything.
yeah. Something that was interesting as far as like parenting approaches. When I was out wake surfing at my colleagues, and so I think he has like 6 kids or something, uh, like pretty big family, and they're all older. Um, but I think there's only like 2 or a couple that still live in the house. The rest have moved out. They're old enough. But anyway, the 2 that were out on the boat with us, they did everything. Like, they had the whole process down because they have the boat on a trailer, so they take it over to the lake, and then they have to get it set up and take the cover off and whatever else goes into it. And I'm sure, like, the drain plug and the batteries and all that stuff. And then like, and then we go out, and then we come back, and then they're doing all this stuff to get everything put away, and orderly, and they have it all, the whole process down. And I was like, and like, no complaining, like he didn't have to tell them to do it, like they just did it, like they just, they're on top of it. It's like a well-oiled machine, and I was like, what, like, how did you get to this point? How did you, what's the key to parenting? And his big point was consistency. So like having like clear consequences and like guidelines, and enforcing consequences consistently. So then there's like no questions, like if this happens, then this is going to happen, and if, like, for why, like give them a why. But yeah, just being consistent with I guess with applying discipline. So
Interesting.
yeah. So that's something that we've kind of taken back, is try to be more consistent with like rules around the house and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because it's
and
easy to let it slide,
yeah, what do you think about, like, as somebody who's going through this with 3 teenagers essentially, with this whole, the sort of technical world that we live in, and we both work in tech and, make our livings essentially on a computer. Kids
Yeah.
always want to have phones and tablets, and it was sort of a concern because we sort of grew up in the age of computers coming alive, more or less, or at least becoming prevalent in homes.
Yeah.
And I remember always wanting to be on the computer, and we had, there were rules about it, and I was always trying to get around the rules. And
Yep. Yep.
but I'm just curious to what you think about this, because I mean, I can understand, obviously you want to have a balance there, and you don't want them to spend the whole day on the thing, but like when I reflect upon my childhood and where I am now, my interest in those things and the availability of the computer, I feel like directly contributed to me working as a software engineer right now. Even though most of the time what I wanted to do was go on there and play SimCity or a game or something.
Yeah.
Something that you might view as not productive. How do you what strategies do you use to, like, sort of balance the tech time?
Yeah. That's a tough one, because things are a lot different now than they were when we grew up. Like, even like what age you really need a cell phone, like
Yeah.
we didn't really get them until we started driving. And I still think that's kind of like a good approach in general, like, because when kids have phones, and really when they have screens, they're just going to use them, because I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of those apps are built to be addictive, so yeah, I don't know, it's definitely a balance. Like, you want them to be able to explore the virtual worlds, and ideally, like, get into creative things that you can do with computers, and besides just coding, or coding, of course, but like or video editing, or music, or art, or whatever. Definitely, it's powerful tools, but
Yeah.
yeah. But then you don't, because they will be on them 12 hours a day if you let them, and then be really grumpy, when they're finally off of them. So I think it's good to have some kind of structure. And what we usually do is like limit it during the week, especially, and more so for like the younger ones. Um, I guess it kind of gets a little bit more relaxed with the older one, but um, and then have it directly tied into grades and getting chores done. So
Mm.
like if you want to have tech time, then you need to stay on top of school, and that needs to be a priority. And you need to be doing your whatever chores you have assigned for that day. And we have like a very clear system now of who has to do what on the specific day. And it's not
Mm.
like big things. It's like I think like 1 or 2 days a week you have to empty the cat box, or you have to empty the dishwasher, or you have to vacuum a room, like, or do your laundry. So it's just like, kind of little household things.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think having that structure is really really beneficial for everybody. I mean, it keeps the household a little bit more orderly, and but also teaches them to like take on some responsibility to get what they want, and to be held accountable when they're not doing what they need to be doing, and to just before they are on tech, doing whatever, goofing off or whatever, they're getting their stuff done that they need to do for school.
Right.
So, but I mean, yeah, it's tough, and getting like exercise too. I think we kind of had it a little different with being at a private school where like you were mandated to play sports. What, like, depending on the year, but I think it was like 2 or 3 seasons of sports.
Yeah.
So and then we had like practice most days of the week after school,
Yeah.
practice our games. So we had a lot of physical activity just kind of built in by default. Um, and it's not like that, like the school system they're in, and so we have to make sure we're like scheduling time and enforcing like that they're out getting some activity, playing in a soccer league or going to the gym or going on runs or whatever, just to try to keep them moving, and like make sure that they're getting some exercise as opposed to just coming home from school and sitting in front of a screen doing whatever all day.
Right. Yeah.
So
Makes sense. Do you try to encourage certain like types of content or restrict content?
try, but honestly, like both Google and Apple, just the parental controls are kind of lacking. I mean, they have them, um, and they work okay, but a few times like they haven't worked. Like the kids have got around them, and I don't know how well like the explicit content filters work, and even like just regular content like on their school Chromebooks, they can watch YouTube however long they want. So
Mm.
they have to have these Chromebooks for school and to do homework and stuff, but then they can also watch YouTube like as much as they want. So it's kind of hard to like make sure that they're staying on task as opposed to just kind of goofing off watching whatever videos. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of a losing battle trying to um, like. I mean, it's still worth trying to do, but I wouldn't have a whole lot of confidence in its success. Like trying to filter content, I think it's probably better to focus on making sure that they're like, I guess, informed consumers, and like they know not to believe everything they see on the internet. They know some stuff like you should just not like go poking around at. There's like expectations of what you should and shouldn't be looking at. um, and I'm sure they're kids. I'm sure they get into some stuff they shouldn't, but uh, yeah, yeah, it's kind of just we're just trying our best to keep them out of that stuff, but
Yeah.
it's tough. I mean, and then kind of trying to keep track of all the devices too. I mean, phones and tablets and computers and Chromebooks and desktops, and and then like gaming consoles, like just so many devices. It's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, I bet. I know for me, like, when we were kids, um, I always enjoyed the sort of like puzzle style games, and I feel like mom and dad somewhat encouraged that. Or
Yeah,
like, if you want to use the computer, like you can do it, but like, or even with TV, we could watch the History Channel back when the History
yeah,
Channel actually had history,
yeah,
but like we couldn't watch, other stuff. Um, but I remember on the computer playing different games that were sort of, it's not, even if they're maybe not explicitly educational, but like sort of tangentially, like requires problem solving skills or, um, I don't know. I feel like those were, that was probably time well spent, to be
yeah,
honest. Um, even for, even if you're trying to limit the amount of computer time a kid has. But like, and then someone, I got into for a while, I thought I wanted to be in the game development world, and I've gone away from that for a number of reasons. But so, I would look at a lot of different games and types of games, and especially like mobile games and stuff. And it's just like you said, it's just built on the next click, the next button. You're not really solving puzzles. You're not really like, I don't know if there's anything you could construe as educational. It's literally just trying to make you click on things. And some of
yeah.
these games, like, it's literally not a game. Like, they call some of these mobile dot games red dot simulators because you open it up and you're just getting alert, 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 alert. Click on this, click on this, click on this, and that's the game. It's like you're just
Huh,
clicking on things. Like, there's not
huh.
actually a game underneath it. It's just like, give me my free coins. Oh, your daily login. Get your free thing over here. Oh, you want to buy $10 worth of this? And it's like, it's a very different experience than, I guess, the sort of games that we grew up with. But uh, I don't know. The gaming world is very strange. But
Yeah,
I do think I was talking about this with Shelby's brother, who came up somewhat recently because he has two kids, and one of them he's like almost 10, getting into that age, and he's doing like some coding class or something, and he's really into computers. And we were talking about, how do you, he wants to encourage it, but not, he doesn't want him to spend all his time on it. And I don't know, like, what I told him is, if he's showing interest in that kind of stuff, like actual coding, I almost don't want to limit it at all.
yeah,
Like, it's such a practical skill. It opens the door to like so many other things. Um, and even if and I think, of course, it's because, he wants to build video games, right? And I've had the same dream in the past, and like, it's a really hard world to be in, but the skills are directly transferable to like working on some business application. Literally like the same programming languages. Like,
oh yeah,
you learn to
yeah,
assign an integer building a game, you can do the same thing building a business application. Like, and so I don't know, like, I definitely have this desire to, sort of foster my children's interests, I guess, should they be interested in that stuff. But then, I mean, I'm also that person who, even now, I'll get on and I'll spend 12 hours playing a video game sometimes, and it's like, it can be hard to take yourself away from that.
yeah, yeah. I think because like there's different uses of tech, and the ones that most concern uh, me are where you're not really getting like you're at least it seems less likely you're getting discernible value from them. Like stuff that's like using apps that are just built to like just to be addictive and to kind of like capture your attention to ultimately sell you ads or whatever or ad space.
Yeah.
Um, But then, some of those are also useful, like, social media and keeping in touch with people. But then I mean, you get hooked into watching stupid stuff on YouTube and just kind of it just turns into like another form of vegetation. You're just like you're not really using your mind, and some of that's fine. Like it's fine to relax and whatnot, but it's just doing it in moderation, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, stuff like like where you're actively like working through things and like learning stuff, and you're coding, or even like good video games, like you're problem solving and trying to like figure out how to reach a goal, and then you moves on to the next step. But um, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of good stuff about computers and and time on them. Um, but I think it's also good to just unplug and just be a kid, like old fashioned kid, like go around, run around the neighborhood and play with friends, kick a ball around,
Oh yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
you know, go find a creek to play in or whatever. I don't know.
We played in some creeks in our days.
Yeah. So,
For some reason, it just made me think of I back to the VHS tapes. I one of the ones I recorded was your 6th birthday.
oh my.
It was at McDonald's.
Huh. Okay. I remember some of those birthdays.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of your friends there, and there's little Brian Watson
Oh yeah.
smiling at the table. It's a funny one. I used to run around the neighborhood with all the kids.
Yeah, that was fun. That's one thing that like these kids don't have as much because our neighborhood is like our street is busy, and then neighborhood is a little bit different, and then just like I feel like in general it's kind of a different period now, like with
Yeah,
weirdos and kidnappings and all that crap. So we're definitely more hesitant to let them just go run off, unsupervised for prolonged periods, which is too bad because we definitely had that when we were growing up and go
yeah,
do whatever,
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. The
so
world's
anyways,
changed.
yeah,
Okay, well, if you don't mind, if we could just call it there.
yeah, sounds
Um,
good.
it's been almost 2 hours.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I'm glad we picked this back up.
yeah, me too. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's see if we can't do it again. I'm gonna be busy this coming weekend, so probably
Yeah.
not this weekend. But yeah, as long as I just like we were talking about at the beginning, as long as we don't let it completely fall by the wayside, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I love this time, and I love setting this time aside to chat. I think it's very
Yeah.
valuable.
Likewise. Yeah.
Okay, brother.
Cool.
Well, thanks very much, and
Yeah.
catch you next time.
Yeah. See you then.